Let me tell you a story that has stayed with me for years. It's about an old, forgotten library that no one in the small town of Evershade dares to speak about. It's a place that people pass by without a second thought, as though it doesn't even exist. But there's something about it, something that lingers in the air. You feel it even before you see the crumbling building, tucked away behind a veil of ivy and shadows. The library stands there, silent and abandoned, like a forgotten relic from another time. I first heard about it from my grandmother. She was a quiet woman, full of stories, though most of them were from the past. I remember her telling me about the library in hushed tones, as if she feared speaking too loudly would wake something inside. She would say, "There are things hidden in that library. Things that shouldn't be disturbed." She always made sure to tell me that no one who had gone in had ever come out the same, if they came out at all. I didn't believe her at first. To me, it was just an old building, full of books no one cared about anymore. But, as I grew older, I couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to her words. It wasn't until one fateful evening that I decided to go there. The air was thick with the smell of rain, and the sky was covered in dark clouds that seemed to hang lower than usual. It was the kind of night when everything feels heavy, as if the world is holding its breath. I had been walking past the library for weeks, my curiosity growing stronger with every passing day. Something was calling me, something I couldn't explain. I had to go inside. I remember the door. It was old and warped, the wood cracked from years of neglect. As I pushed it open, it creaked loudly. Like a warning, the smell of dust and mildew hit me instantly, and the air felt stale, as though the building hadn't breathed in decades. The first thing that struck me was the silence. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was a stillness that pressed against my chest, as though the place itself was holding its breath. I felt it then, the presence of something old, something forgotten, lingering in the air. The library was enormous. The shelves stretched on forever, stacked with old, leather-bound books that looked as though they hadn't been touched in years. The floorboards groaned under my feet as I walked deeper inside, my footsteps the only sound in the overwhelming quiet. I couldn't help but wonder why no one had taken the books. Why hadn't anyone come to clean the place, to take away the dust? It felt as if the library had simply been abandoned, left to decay as time passed by, untouched by the outside world. As I walked between the shelves, something caught my eye. At the back of the room, in a darkened corner, there was a pedestal, and on that pedestal rested a book. But it wasn't like any book I had ever seen. The cover was dark leather, worn with age, and strange symbols were carved into it, glowing faintly in the dim light. I felt drawn to it, as if something in the book was calling me. I knew, without a doubt, that this was the book my grandmother had warned me about, the one that held the library's secret. My hand trembled as I reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the cover, a chill spread through the air. The temperature in the room dropped, and I felt a weight settle over me, as though the very atmosphere had changed. I should have turned back then, but I didn't. Instead, I opened the book. The pages were blank, completely blank. I stared at the empty pages, confused. Why would anyone write a book with no words? But then, as I flipped through the pages, I heard it, a whisper. At first, it was so soft I thought I imagined it, like a breeze brushing past my ear. But then the whisper grew louder, clearer. It was coming from the book itself. It was calling my name. I froze. I wanted to put the book down, to walk away, but my body wouldn't move. The whisper was pulling me in, like an invisible thread wrapped around my chest. I leaned in closer, my ear almost touching the pages, and that's when it happened. The pages began to fill with words, strange symbols, glowing and shifting in ways that made no sense. They weren't written in any language I recognized, but somehow, I could understand them. The words told a story, but it wasn't just any story. It was the story of the library, of a place where the living and the dead were intertwined, where time didn't exist, and where souls were trapped between the pages of books, forever bound to the library. I realized, with a sinking feeling in my stomach, that the library wasn't just a place of forgotten books. It was a prison. The souls of the lost, the ones who had come here seeking answers or knowledge, were now part of the library's collection, their voices whispering through the pages, forever trapped in the silence. And now, I too had become part of that collection. The moment I heard the whisper, I was bound. There was no escape. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, but the room seemed to shift. The walls were closing in, and the door I had come through was gone. The library was alive, and I was trapped inside. The whispers grew louder, filling the air, and I realized then that I was no longer alone. The voices of the lost were all around me, calling my name, pulling me deeper into the darkness. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to run to escape, but my legs wouldn't move. The library had claimed me, just as it had claimed so many others. The book's pages fluttered as if driven by an invisible wind, turning faster and faster, the words spilling out, wrapping themselves around my mind, pulling me deeper into its grip. And then, as the darkness consumed me, I realized the truth. The library didn't just hold books. It held memories, it held souls, it held everything that had ever been lost to time. And now, I was part of it. Forever.